I'm Betsy Burton, and I'm a distinguished analyst within Gartner's Enterprise Architecture team.
I'm Ann Lapkin. I'm a Vice President of Research in Gartner's Enterprise Architecture practice. The role of enterprise architects and enterprise architecture has changed dramatically over the last 15 or 20 years. It used to be that architecture was really about IT convenience. It was about simplifying the IT environment, reducing the number of things that the IT folks had to worry about. But at the end of the day, that doesn't really do it for the business. The business isn't concerned about making IT's job easier. It's concerned about business results. So what we see is that architects are moving, whether they'd like to or not, into the business realm and into an understanding of how they can actually enable business outcomes rather than just worry about IT.
Today what we see is, since IT and business are becoming much more closely linked, more than aligned, enterprise architecture is having a much more profound role within organizations in terms of driving how they support technology, how they support information, and how they support their business. As a result, the role of an enterprise architecture and the skills of an enterprise architect over the next 5 years are going to have to be much more focused on how they communicate enterprise architecture and the value of enterprise architecture within the organization. This means developing skills having to do with empathy and communication and being able to educate and really evangelize the role of enterprise architecture within their organization.
One of the questions that I get from clients most often is, how do I express the value of my enterprise architecture? And one of the things we've learned is that most enterprise architecture teams do a really bad job of explaining the value of enterprise architecture to the business. They don't put it in business terms. They don't express the value of enterprise architecture in terms of business outcomes, and they don't talk about what real impact they're going to have on the business. So when we look at the best practices of enterprise architecture, I would have to say that the three things that come to the top of the list are: number one, to understand your value proposition in terms of what you're delivering to your business. Number two, to set up a formal communications discipline to be able to communicate that value to the business and to your other stakeholders. And number three, to put in place some concrete measurements so that you can actually demonstrate that you're delivering value to the business.
We recently did a survey at Gartner's Enterprise Architecture Summit with a number of clients and asked them to identify their top 3 concerns or top 3 challenges in supporting enterprise architecture. And it was really interesting, overwhelming. The top issues that people have in enterprise architecture have to do with finding people of the right skills and being able to understand their business need and value of enterprise architecture. It was really fascinating. It was almost at a rate of about 4 to 1. The focus and the requirements having to do with business and people's skills over the technology issues. I'm not saying that the technology issues aren't important and the information management issues are not important. They are, but overwhelming, the top issues have to do with: how do I find the right skills? How do I bring people together to focus in on enterprise architecture? And how do I make sure that enterprise architecture is supporting my business goals and objectives?
In order to be successful from an architectural perspective, you have to understand what the business is doing, and you have to be able to engage with them in business terms. That's difficult for architects because most of them are technologists and they don't feel comfortable necessarily treading in that business space. We advise our clients very often that the best training they can give their architecture teams is to send them to a 2-day facilitation course so that they learn how to facilitate decision-making across the stakeholders rather than try and make all the decisions themselves.
We speak to a lot of organizations who try to take their enterprise architecture and control how people work and how users work within their organization by setting standards or setting patterns for how they should be working. And what we're seeing is it's a new day. The digital natives, the digital immigrants, users are making many more decisions within their enterprise, and they have the ability to drive forward business value. Today, what we see is those users have an ability, if you're trying to control them, to break out of those molds and really, in essence, affect and change your enterprise architecture. Rather than trying to control those users, rather than try to mandate what they should be doing, what enterprise architects should do is empower and enable change within the organization. This is a fundamental shift in how we've approached enterprise architecture in the past, which is not just empowering the business, not just empowering IT, but empowering the individual person within your organization to deliver the highest business value. If you have anything to do with enterprise architecture or business process or business strategy driving towards a future state, you should be coming to the Enterprise Architecture Summit. Hope to see you there.